Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Melusine, aka Tamlin Lancelot. Melusine is a very interesting character in obviously story, and then certainly, again, gameplay. Melusine's one of those characters that has been on the forefront of basically power creep in FGO now ever since her release. You guys have heard me talk about her numerous times probably on the channel, and if you haven't, I think some people would certainly know that I have a contentious relationship with her. In that regard, that I do believe that the devs overstepped with her design. And I'm going to talk about that with you guys and kind of run through everything here. But still, please understand, I do not have a chip on my shoulder against her in any way, shape, or form as a character. This is just one of those things where when I see the devs do something where they overstep, it basically makes no sense to me. I don't really see why they need to make certain units as strong as they do. So I'm going to, again, try to be as fair to her, as an impartial to her as possible. I'm going to give you guys the lowdown on her actual performance and how she works. That way you guys can understand better basically what you can do with her, and again, some of the crazy stuff that she can pull off. She is a unit that is going to be worthy of all of your attention. So again, I highly recommend watching and seeing everything that I have to say on her. So let's go ahead and start off here at the beginning. Melusine has roughly 12,000 attack power here, and that is not a bad number. Again, 12,000 is always going to be in that good number range, basically, for 5 stars. This is on the hefty side. It's very rare to see anything higher than this, so again, definitely good in that regard. She still manages to have about 14k HP, but with most of Melusine's uses, we don't care too much about her HP. A lot of how Melusine is used nowadays is as this sort of tactical nuke that you're going to set off and make sure that everything is dead within 3 turns. There are some concerns with that, but certainly there are going to be times where maybe things don't work out your way, it doesn't happen exactly how you think, and then maybe you do have to go a little bit more of the distance with Melusine for her HP here. So again, still good to have at least the 14k. You're not quite up into the 15k range, but it's not a bad number as far as HP goes. It's not anemic. So, looking at this, she's also Earth traded here. She has Star Absorption of 90 and Star Generation of 12%. She has a actually fairly decent NP charge attack rate here of 0.65. A lot of the units that we see nowadays, they tend to have really good hit counts on their cards, and they tend to be hovering in that like 50% range. Instead, she's at 0.65, so she's not doing too bad in that regard. She's a little bit higher than average. And she still manages to also have higher than average NP charge defense. I think you guys can probably get used to me saying this throughout this, that a lot of Melusine stuff is higher than average. So again, your standard here for MP charge defense is 3%. That is how much charge you get whenever you are attacked. And it is, again, going to be the amount per hit of the attack. So Melusine getting 4% instead of 3% just means she gets even more when she does get hit. But again, if you're playing her right, you probably never do. So she has a 23% death rate. That is not too shabby there. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just kind of square in the middle. She is female gendered, animal characteristic servant, Brynhilder's beloved, costume owning, demonic, kind of hard to see here off the edge of the screen, beast servant, dragon, fae, fairy tale servant, humanoid, immune to pigify, because she just needed that one, and servant, 7 knight servant, and then in stage 1 costume 1 she is a round table knight. So the thing, there's a lot of unique stuff about Melusine as we go through, and that's gonna cause me to kind of talk about some of this. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the fact that Melusine is our game's first unit that can basically change her NP type between single target arts and AoE buster. And that's going to really kind of come into concern here when we start looking at the deck. So as we start to look at her cards here, you guys can see a unit that can be both arts or buster depending on how you play them means that having the 2 buster cards and having the 2 arts cards is a great way of handling things. So again, this does mean that in combination with the NP, you're gonna get 3-in-1 basically. And then certainly, even if you don't, you're still going to have at least multiple cards by which to be able to exploit it. The only concern there is going to be the single quick card, which still does mean that occasionally you'll be able to form mighty chains, but again, you probably shouldn't have to card too much with Melusine, depending on what you're doing. Even if you have to, all of her hit counts are average, or in the case of the quick card, above average. So these are good hit counts. It's definitely something I like to see. And like we already pointed out, she has a 0.65 NP gain rate up here, so she's not doing too shabby in overall card performance for NP gen. Now we're going to get into her kit, and this is where things do start to become really apparent as to how strong Melusine can be. So looking off right here at the beginning, you can see her first skill here increases her own attack by 40% for 3 turns. This is all on a 6-turn cooldown, so just keep that in mind as we go through, that cooldowns in the Buster system matter, and this does mean that you will be able to get back to this in a standard conventional 3-turn with a double Koyanskaya setup. So as a result of this means this 40% gets doubled up. And then you can look here and see that she also gets a damage cut to reduce damage taken by 500 for 3 turns. Again, this is one of those deals where this is actually kind of being carried over a little bit from OG Lancelot. If you guys have paid attention to some of the other Fairy Knights, other Tamlins, they basically retain some of the traits of their original versions, their original male counterparts, right? So again, that's kind of where this is coming in. She gets a little bit of a damage cut. It's not amazing. It's not bad, though, either. It's certainly nice to have. And then she also increases her own max HP for 3 turns by 2,000. To me, this is actually kind of overkill. This is on top of the 14,000 she already has. You're going to start to hear me say this quite a bit. She doesn't really need this. This is definitely something that is nice for her, but yeah, this just basically makes her have a functional heal, and it actually acts as an overheal due to the way that max heal works. So it is a really, really strong addition, but it's ultimately something that for the majority of players, they find themselves not really needing too much. Then on top of that, she charges her own NP gauge by 30%. So remember, because of the fact that you can double the skill up, you get to get this 30% charge back should you need it. The odd thing here is you probably don't. And that's something we'll talk about in a minute. So as we look at the second skill here, you can see she has, again, the ability to increase her own star absorption for 3 turns by 5,000%. This is overkill. Again, she doesn't actually need this amount. In order to be able to soak stars on a Lancer, I think 1,000 to maybe even 500% would have been perfectly fine. 5,000% is the amount that we typically see on Berserkers and Avengers because they actually need that level of star absorption. This functionally means that with, again, her normal star absorption rate, almost no one's going to absorb stars other than what would be influenced by the normal RNG distribution of cards and stuff like that. So again, I don't really know why they gave it to her this strong, but they chose to. It's one of those deals where she just, within her class, did not need it to be this way. Her star, again, she gains critical stars every single turn for 3 turns by up to 10, so you have a functional 20-30 in there. There are many servants that have this, so again, I think that's a-okay. That is just a strong, nice addition. We could maybe say that from the perspective of her being a potential Buster unit, we probably don't need those stars. There are numerous ways to get stars in the Buster system with Koyanskaya and Oberon coming out, but hey, we'll take it, right? More stars never hurt anyone. And again, there is the additional 10 crit star bomb that she's going to get right here when you pop the skill. And all of this is going to be on a 5-turn cooldown, so this does mean that if you're operating in a Koyanskaya system, you can pop this on functionally back-to-back turns. So let's say you're to encounter a, middle wave with a high health enemy, or maybe you just want to actually, low roll something with her single target arts MP and get some carding out of it. Again, you would have the ability to not only do this once, but potentially do this again on the next turn if you had enough cooldown reduction. So it is a really, really strong capability in that regard. But again, it's going to depend on how much you're going to rely on cards. So as we get to the third skill here, this is kind of where all hell breaks loose. So the way this skill works is it is different depending on what ascension stage you have Melusine in. So if she's in her first or second form, it's going to do this first version, which is that it's going to charge her own NP gauge 100%. It's then going to also grant herself invincibility for 1 turn, all on a 5-turn cooldown. This is strong, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about this. So, functionally what this does is it's also going to transform her into her 3rd stage. The way Melusine works is in her first 2 stages, she is single target arts. In her 3rd stage, Melusine is AoE buster. So there's a lot to be said about this skill. For one, the big thing you need to know is the Ascension form that you keep Melusine in matters, both for you and supports. Anyone that's going to use your Melusine that you put up on support will care about what Ascension stage you have her in, because they're going to potentially want it to be certain ways in order to be able to utilize this 100% charge. Now, there was actually, interestingly enough, a bug when she first came out on JP. We have no idea if that'll be active on NA. Look for it to be. I wouldn't be surprised if they let that sneak in again. But the way it actually worked is there was a way in which you could force crash the game right as you had hit this skill, and you could come back and she was still in her single target arts form, but had charged herself 100%. So I don't know whether or not that'll actually make it in, but that will be hilarious if it does again, because they should have known better, since it was a thing that the devs had to actually go back in and fix after launch. Very rare to have a bug like that on an actual unit. But again, I'm not going to say that's something you guys should strive to do. There's very limited applications for why that would help you, but it is an intriguing thing nonetheless. Still, the way the majority of people do this and use this is, well, yes, you can use this to charge up 100% for, say, the purposes of trying to get enough charge in a lotto comp or something like that. Maybe have Melusine take out one of the waves. The way the majority of people use this is they actually use this to very quickly transfer her into stage 3 on turn 1. So a lot of people will use it to get 100% charge right there. That's enough for them to handle the first turn, and they're good. From there, before she's even NP'd, she's already AoE buster. And so a lot of people will then go, double 50% chargers here. That's enough to have the second wave handled. And then basically from there, they end up utilizing Melusine's first skill for the 30% charge, and then coming in back here with like an Oberon for the additional 70%. And now you've got 100% charge on turn 3 as well. So the interesting part about this is, no, Melusine doesn't require double Koyanskaya Oberon. So you can get away with a scenario where you could use an Oberon, a Koyanskaya, and some other third 50% charge or support, and it would work. The downside is, if you're not using double Koyanskaya, you probably are not getting to double up this first skill, which means you're not going to get the benefit of it. Also, keep in mind that what the skill does here in the 3rd stage, so this is, now she's in stage 3, now let's assume you either started out in stage 3, or that you've gotten to it now and you've gotten the cooldown back somehow, because it is all only on a 5-turn cooldown. This also increases NP damage for 3 turns by 30%. This is strong because not only does the scale with Oberon's 3rd ability, but this is also something that, because of cooldown reductions, we can get back to. So we could utilize Ray Horizon here on turn 1 to give her 100% charge, get back to it, and then still gain the benefit on the next turn of 30% NP damage. Because it lasts for 3 turns, this functionally means that you can have it as soon as turn 2 and for turn 3. So that is a really strong ability there, because it does just add in a lot more damage capability. And like we talked about, consider this to be almost double with Oberon in the party. So again, it's a really, really powerful combination. So having double Koyanskaya Oberon is still the optimal setup for her. But yes, you can get away with not having all of the pieces of the puzzle. As long as you have 2 of the pieces of the supports basically locked in, you could take the 3rd one from a friend support and still be able to make it work. So the thing I'm going to point out to you guys right here is that, and again, this skill is overkill, just like we said before. The way to understand it is this skill could literally give you half the charge it does. You could literally split off 50% of the charge it gives you, and Melusine would still be able to 3-turn from 0% charge. What do I mean by that? Well, Melusine is one of our only buster units in the game that can 3-turn from 0, handling all the waves herself without any sort of shenanigans or anything like that. So, again, there are other units that can. You've got Arcueid, who's going to be coming up. You've got Castraku, who's getting his buff here in Lost Belt 6. That's going to allow him to do it as well. But the way Melusine works here is essentially that, again, if you look at it from a backward standpoint, so we already talked about how, again, on turn 3, you'd have her 30% charge. On turn 2, and basically have Oberon there. On turn 2, you use double Koyanskayas. So, what that means is that you could have gotten this 30% charge back. So functionally, even regardless of this this third skill here that gives 100% charge, you could have used the 30% charge here. You could have maxed out her mana loading. And so this skill could have only given you 50% charge, and you'd still be able to 3-turn from 0 with it. It's a really interesting thing to me. Whenever I keep looking at Melusine's kit, this is sort of why I bring it up. It just appears like they just power crept the hell out of everything. And I know people have made arguments before about lore. I'm not going to get into that for spoiler reasons. But I'm still going to say that ultimately at the end of the day, they do have to balance their game. And the lore argument doesn't work at all when they don't use it evenly across the board for everyone. They literally can't use lore as an excuse for why a servant is strong when they don't use lore as an excuse for why other servants are strong. So that ends up being one of our issues over time, is that it's just not really applied evenly. But still, it is a very, very strong skill. And just due to the fact that it is 100% charge, means that you have the capability of just always assuring that you can start from 0. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of power in being able to start from 0. I'm going to talk about it when we get to the craft essences, though. So just keep that one in the back of your head, and we'll get to it in a minute. She has Magic Resistance B here for her passive skills, just a little bit of extra debuff resistance, and Territory Creation B for some extra arts performance. Again, like I said, this actually helps her out a little bit with her arts in P. Not necessarily going to help you out too much with carding, but hey, it's there if you were to need it, so it is a nice thing in that regard. Looking at her append skills here, I'm going to tell you the extra attack finesse is probably only going to be a thing for you if you're going to be focusing more on Melusine at lower NP levels. At lower NP levels, Melusine might not still clear everything that you try to put her up against, but certainly there have been, this is one of those units where when you have NP 5 of the unit, when you have the unit grailed to 120 at a high NP level, like, you can do some crazy things. So there are a lot of nodes that people have managed to clear with Melusine over time where it doesn't really matter what the node makeup was, because Melusine able to 3-turn in an automated way with Buster doesn't care about, refund in that regard. And then certainly you also have the flip side of, because she scales so well with Oberon, she ends up hitting extremely hard. And so she ends up being able to not really care about, being able to overcome it. So at a high MP level, you have a tendency not to care too much about carding. At a low MP level, you probably will. That's where this might come in a little bit more. Now, the question then would be, what about mana loading? I just got done telling you how they really don't need to give her even half the charge that they do, and she would still be able to 3-turn from 0. So I think this is a little bit one of those deals where you certainly don't have to get the mana loading on Melusine. I think given the fact that on turn 1, the majority of people are going to be using her 100% charge skill here, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people probably won't bother with the mana loading when they have low NP levels, when they don't have a lot of coins. And I can't say that it's the worst choice in the world either. I think it's just, hey, look, mana loading can be used to be able to squeeze out a little bit more charge in hybrid scenarios where you maybe want a unit to take one wave, and so you're trying to charge them as well as another unit at the same time. Melusine's probably not going to have that issue. So you can do it, but to me, there's not really a big reason to have to. So again, I would say it's one of those deals where as long as you're luring her third skill here, mana loading doesn't necessarily need to be chosen right away. Still can find some uses for it, but they would be rare and niche. Her third skill here is anti-lancer attack damage aptitude. Now, I'm going to say this. If you're not going to roll for high NP levels of Melusine, this append is functionally useless. You're not going to probably be using her to do crazy stuff like, counterclassing and cross-classing. But again, if you're someone that you're gonna be an enthusiast, you're gonna roll a lot of copies of her, you want her to be your one-stop shop solution for everything. I don't think there's going to be everything in the game that you can kill with Melusine. There's certainly going to be things that, are going to get thrown your way that are going to cause you issues. But I do think, that's where she becomes a lot more of a consideration for, hey, maybe I can manage to handle some of these, neutral waves that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then for that, thinking about it from that perspective, certainly then the third append, maybe you just want to use her against other Lancers. So, again, I don't think it's that strong of a case, but it is a case nonetheless. Doubly so if you're rolling in the coins. Now, again, here we get to her actual NP. It is a 5-hit single target arts for stages 1 and 2. Remember, as she transforms into stage 3, it changes. But again, this is going to allow her to deal damage to one enemy. After the damage goes out, it puts a defense down on them, basically. It's not a actual defense down. It's more of increased damage taken by 1,000. So this just is a flat damage increase of 1,000 for 5 turns. This is actually, again, another remnant of Lancelot. This NP is basically Lancelot Saber's NP to that regard. It's also going to gain her 10 crit stars. So again, in conjunction with that middle skill that's going to be gaining her stars per turn and stars on use, you also have the ability to have a star bomb on her arts NP here. But then, and this is the sneaky thing about this, her overcharge effect. Basically, when she NP, she's going to increase her own NP generation rate for 3 turns, activating first. So this is going to come in before her NP. She's going to get an NP gen up of 20%. That's not bad. And the fact that this basically lasts for 3 turns means using her as a single target, you're going to get even more and more and more NP gen. So her NP gen is not going to be bad. It's a 5-hit single target arts with, again, a 0.65 base NP gen. She's got that territory creation for extra stuff, and she's going to be able to, every single time she NPs, get even more NP gen. So Melusine can actually be a pretty fluid single target arts looper. It's kind of crazy. You're still going to need charge or cards to help bail her out in some of those circumstances, but it's not that hard to do. So again, that's where I think a lot of value for Melusine comes in for people, is the fact that Melusine is somebody that can do both. She can step into both worlds. She could be your single target Lancer or your AoE or both. And so that can be a really nice reason to roll for Melusine if you're a newer player. Now, keep in mind, the one thing I'm going to say here is I'm going to disclaim the fact that as a newer player, you probably want to try to get your hands on some of these other welfares that are coming out here, particularly Castoria, whose banner is up right now, particularly Koyanskaya and Oberon, who are coming up here, especially Oberon, because he's not coming back for 18 months. So, again, I think there's a lot more benefit to getting them, and Melusine will have another banner that she's going to come out on basically before Tunguska at the end of the year. So she will be really useful in the Tunguska event. A lot of that has to do with the fact that, again, she basically is a demonic beast servant. And so that's going to be really strong for the Tunguska farm. But you will have another opportunity to roll her before that. So with that being maybe the primary need of her, I'm going to say that you can punt and wait if you're worried about rolling concerns in that regard. Still, keep in mind the fact that, again, you don't have to have Melusine in order to do Tunguska. There are other demonic beast servants out there. There are other ways to clear that raid. So again, up to you. But certainly, this is something to be considered with regards to the fact that she is a decent single target arts unit. So, as we get to stage 3 here, now she's become AoE Buster. So she's a 5-hit AoE Buster. She grants herself Invuln Pierce, basically. Ignore invincibility for 1 turn, activating first. So this is not only going to impact her NP, but also any cards after the fact. And again, to me, this is one of the other ways that I could say she probably didn't need this. You have a unit that has the capability of starting from 0, so Melusine could have used any Invuln Pierce CE in the sun. But again, it is a really strong thing to have and definitely allows her to take a craft essence of her choosing that instead. She's going to deal damage to all enemies then, and then inflict burn for 1,000 damage for 5 turns to them. So this is kind of the inverse, basically, of the, hey, you're going to deal 1,000 more damage when you hit. This is now going to be, hey, you're going to deal 1,000 more damage per turn due to burn. So a little bit of a difference of how this, functions between that and the arts one. Then we get to her overcharge effect, and this is yet another way in which Melusine's overkill. So Melusine already has the ability to, again, get back to have the third skill again and have the 30% NP damage up. She has the ability to double stack her first skill, which has the 40% NP damage on it. But if you're 3-turning with her as Buster, you also get 3 turns of Buster performance by 20%, activating first. So every single time she NPs, she's going to get stronger. It's definitely a nice thing. It's not quite NP damage, which would have scaled even more insanely with Oberon, but it's still nice to have. It still is a lot of damage over time. So really, really good for her to have that. Now, let's talk damage for Melusine. So again, right here, right now, you guys can see the NP damage list. And the one thing I've always told you guys is, again, please don't treat this as gospel. Don't use this to try and say units are good or bad. It's more useful for comparative means, but it's only useful if you understand it. So the way that this sheet works is it lists everything in neutral numbers here. I have the sheet sorted by NP1 because whenever we're talking about a limited unit, I tend to talk about NP1s to you guys. And then certainly it also includes all of their own self buffs added. So again, it's one of those deals where you're not going to have all of the support unit buffs and stuff that you maybe will normally see. So looking at Melusine in her single target form, because that's how we have it filtered right here, she's not super high up on the list. In fact, you guys can see there are numerous 4 stars that are higher than her. And yes, even, some of the really buffed 5 stars, including Enkidu up here, who just does crazy damage. Obviously, you've also got a lot of niche damage coming into play for some of these units, resulting in some crazy numbers, okay? Now, that being said, why is Melusine still worthy of your attention? Because Melusine, even at NP1, this may not be the best number. Maybe you're someone that's rolling along here and you've got something like, again, you may run Lancer from the Summer 5 rerun that you have at NP5. That's 50k right there, Maybe you're someone that still has Nagao Kagatora from Guda Guda 4, and that's 60k right there at MP5. Those are both welfares. So why then should you consider Melusine, who's sitting here at 43? Well, for starters, again, the argument that she can also be your AoE does hold some merit. Secondly, yeah, that's 43k. But Melusine, out of both of those 2 welfares that I listed there, is by far the more fluid looper. You're going to be able to get back to Melusine's NP easier and do it faster and more each time. So that's something I think to be considered. That, yeah, she might not be the best in damage as a single target. She's still a very serviceable and quality option for you. Okay? And keep in mind, she still had hard survivability too on that 3rd skill. So it is something to pay attention to. Just also remember the fact that, again, with this 3rd skill here, if you guys manage to use it, maybe you go, oh no, I didn't get enough refund. I need to use this in order to have enough. This is going to change her into Buster. If you're sitting there trying to loop with her as single target, and you have all these arts buffs on her, and she's now Buster, that damage is going to go way down from whatever you were expecting. So keep that in mind. The reverse is also true. If you proceed to, again, try to sit there and throw all these Buster buffs on her, she's not going to do too well as arts. Okay? So that's something that you guys need to be wary of, is which form you have her in and how that's going to impact things. Again, the other interesting thing to denote, and I should have said this while we were covering the skill originally, is that this skill only works one direction. It will only ever change you into the 3rd Ascension. It cannot, once you're in the 3rd Ascension, change you back. You cannot go back to being single target. Okay? So once you've used the 3rd skill, you are now AoE. There's no going back. That is why, again, what Ascension you start her out in really matters. It's really important to understand that concept. So it only works one direction. But still, yes, Melusine as a single target arts, still a very solid option. Can definitely refund well for you. Might not be the hardest hitting option, might not have the niche damage and stuff, but can certainly function for you if you need someone to fill that role. Now let's talk AoE Buster. So this is her in stage 3. How does she stack up against some of the other Lancers? And you can see here that she's not the strongest. She's not at the top of the list here. In fact, you have a 4-star at the top of the list here, which I think we all know just has been sitting there for a long time and done some really solid work. Now, that lead is not very significant. In fact, you can see Karna right there. So this paints Karna in a very good light. A lot of people would look at Karna and go, oh, he's anti-divine too. He's doing really solid work here. Karna's got one very glaring issue, and that's that Karna has 25% charge, which you may as well round down to 20%. Because you can't pop it twice on the same turn, even with Koyanskaya buffs. So the fact that he may as well be 20% means it's very difficult to make him work with sort of the conventional double Koyanskaya Oberon setup. 30% chargers can, but a 25% charger can't. At least not without, pulling some shenanigans like a hybrid setup where maybe a Koyanskaya takes one of the waves, or maybe you have a second DPS that takes one of the waves. Those sorts of things are possible, okay? So just keep that in mind. There's always an asterisk whenever I say something with regards to the Buster system. But, yeah. So you might be sitting here thinking, oh, okay, well, she doesn't look like she's that high up. Again, she's only here at 24k. That's 5,000 below Lartoria here. Sorry, Lalter. I can't emphasize enough how much of a force magnifier charge is. Because having the ability to start from, in, again, Lalter's case, she's another 20% charger. She's probably starting out best case scenario with like a 60% CE, something like, Partake with the King, or, Battle Olympia, or something like that, right? And so she can get some nice extra steroid out of that. That is nothing compared to the amount of damage that Melusine can get extra from being able to wield Black Grail. Black Grail is going to be, again, the first CE recommendation for her, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a second. But the thing to understand here is this number totally belies the truth. It is not at all indicative of the actual numbers that she'll be doing for you, considering it is both neutral and only her own self buffs. So when you start adding that in, when you start adding in everything else, you start going, ooh, wow, okay, this actually scales crazily. Remember, too, this also does not include that 20% per turn that you might be receiving extra versions of on future loops. So this would include the base 20, okay? The first NP. This would not include, hey, I'm now doing my second NP on turn 2, so now I'm at 40%. And this would not include, hey, I'm now doing my third NP on turn 3, so now I'm at 60%. So it's only going to include that 20% here. Now, again, you can see, too, we also denote the additional capability to have the 30% NP damage up instead of NP charge. So the number is better than it looks because this doesn't include the NP damage from the third skill. Okay? Remember, though, in Double Koyanskaya setup, you can get back to that. So that probably is your true number, at least as far as turn 2 and 3 go. Now, again, the other thing to point out here is that by virtue of her ability to touch Black Grail, she gains the ability to synchronize extremely well with Oberon. Remember that Oberon's third skill has NP damage boost. It is a unique buff that doubles all sources of NP damage. So that 80% extra NP damage that Black Grail gives at MLB becomes 160% with Oberon. That's why the ability to touch Black Grail was already strong before Oberon. It was already our strongest sort of damage boosting CE in the game, but it becomes even more insane with Oberon. Being able to touch Zero, being able to touch Black Grail is huge now. It absolutely dramatically impacts the amount of damage that a unit can do. Okay? And remember, this is a C that doesn't just scale to 2000, it scales to 2400 too, so you get 400 extra attack if you have MLB. I know right now people are thinking, oh, but Cat, I don't have MLB. It is what it is, okay? Even a single copy of Black Grail is going to make that big of a difference for you. You don't have to use Black Grail. You can use other craft essences. They're still going to be just as strong. Remember, there is still basically Heaven's Feel. There is still your 4-star version. I think it's Angel's Song. And there is still the 3-star variant as well. So you guys can still have NP damage boosting Cs to really help you out, even if you don't have the best variant of it. But yeah, Black Grail and the ability to touch it is super strong. Because of that, there's functionally no reason to talk about any other craft essence. Remember, she has Invuln Pierce, so you're not ever going to need Invuln Pierce on her as a result. And again, I think the more common problem that you're going to see, especially with regards to her damage over time, is going to be, what if I only have NP1? What if I can't use Black Grail? Well, why can't you use Black Grail? Maybe because you're in the middle of an event. Maybe because you're trying to run a sort of 6-slot combo, so a max efficiency, max craft essence for the event combo, right? Then that means you're not going to be using Black Grail, so you're going to lose out a lot of damage there. That will be a concern for you guys at low MP levels. At higher MP levels, Melusine can do some crazy stuff still, so it's still kind of hilarious. But that is one of the things that we certainly notice. And don't take this as me encouraging you to get higher MP levels. You do not have to have higher MP levels of Melusine. It's just something that's very widely known, just like with Space Ishtar, just like with various other extremely strong servants, that a really powerful version of this unit is capable of doing some pretty amazing things. So, again, that's something to consider. If we're talking arts, and I think this is something that we should pay attention to, most people do not use Melusine solely as arts. They may use her to take out, like, a single enemy wave 1, okay? And so they'll use her as arts for wave 1, then pop her 3rd skill, convert her into Buster, and have her AoE down waves 2 and 3. So with that in mind, with regards to craft essence suggestions for arts, you're going to see me recommend something like Heavenly Demon Princess. This is a welfare CE from Summer 4, which had a rerun last year. So for those of you guys that have been playing at least in the last year, you should have this. And again, it does scale up to 50% charge. It does give critical damage of arts cards, which not super helpful if you're going to convert into Buster later, but it does have NP damage of 15%. So that is going to be at least a usable CE. It's going to help you out both in arts and Buster. So you have the capability of the damage buff here working for you. And it is all attack scaling. So another really nice craft essence to level up if you have it. Now, if you're a patient person, you can wait till summer this year, and you can instead grab Ocean Flyer. This is another welfare craft essence that's going to be coming out this year. And so, again, this is actually talked about in my what craft essences to level up and focus on this year video that I produced all the way at the beginning of the year. It is a really, really solid welfare one. So again, this one's going to have 50% starting charge, NP damage by 15%, so far it's the same. But it's also going to have arts card performance by 8%, so not arts crit, but arts card performance. Not too shabby. Again, like I said, odds are you probably aren't going to need a different craft essence for Buster. There's certainly things that are like Ocean Flyer, like Cranking. That's the Buster form of it. It's going to come out with the Bunyan event next year, but probably aren't going to need it. You have the ability to start from 0, which means you have the ability to start with more powerful craft essences should the need arise. And again, this is something that I think should be talked about, as the fact that Melusine can start from 0 means she is functionally craft essence free. So you could take a QP CE, a Bond CE, whatever you want on her, and it would work as long as you have enough damage to overcome the waves that you're going to be facing. So that is something I think you should really consider about Melusine. Please understand, Melusine is a mistake by the devs in that regard. They made her too strong, and still to this day on JP, we are still playing catch up with her in a lot of ways. We finally have some units that actually do out-damage her, but Melusine did reign supreme as our damage king for quite a while. There are some niche times that units can surpass her, including Mao Nobu in the right settings. But again, I think you guys will see over time that she still retains a lot of value and is still very strong. So no matter what they end up releasing that's stronger than her, they're going to have to move the goalposts very far in order to have them actually have Melusine be someone that is looking like she needs a buff. So you are certainly safe to roll Melusine and be able to set your fears at ease with regards to Lancers for a while at minimum. Again, there are other Lancers that can at least perform well in spite of Melusine's existence, but there's almost no one that can achieve the same heights that she can right now. That's the big thing to consider about Melusine. And my personal advice is that for most of you guys, you're probably just going to be using her in stage 3 a lot, just basically using her as a 3-turn buster unit. Because again, she doesn't care about the makeup of the node, and she's probably just going to kill just fine anyways. The damage scalability in that form is pretty much as good as it is in arts, and that's kind of one of the issues. So again, let me know what you guys think about Melusine. Let me know if you'll be rolling. Let me know again how many copies you're going to be going for. I'll be interested to read. I will see you guys for the next one. Thank you for watching this servant analysis.